Hello, this is Chad Peterson and Josh Anderson, and we wanted to show our IMAPEX project, which is CHROnIC, or Cisco Health Report and Online Information Center. The goal of this project was to simplify the process of determining whether your servers are fully in compliance with our HCL tool or not. UCS does a great job of showing you, what firmware is running on the system. But once we really start taking a look at, determining whether our servers are in compliance or not, we really need to start taking a look at the operating system and drivers running there too, especially the ones around our adapters. That's something that I always see that's missed from our customers, and it's something that even internally we don't tend to keep updated as much. The process of actually doing this is pretty tedious, and that's exactly why most people try to avoid it at all cost. And so we wanted to build CHROnIC to help make that process a lot simpler. So before we jump into the tool, Josh will walk you through that, but first I'm going to show you what it takes to actually determine whether your server meets our HCL or not. So the first thing you have to do is jump over into UCS. So here I'm going to click on a server here. We have to determine what the server type is. I need to figure out what kind of CPUs I have inside my server as well. And then I need to figure out what versions of firmware I'm running on my adapters, as well as the versions of firmware running elsewhere in the system and what type of adapters I have. I also then need to jump over into vCenter to figure out on my host itself what version of ESX is running. I also then need to figure out what my IP address or host name is. The last thing we have to do is figure out what the ENIC and FNIC drivers on that server are. So I'm going to jump over into the host that I've already been logged into. You first have to go through and determine what all NICs do you have in there to figure out what ENIC drivers are running on them. So here I'm just going to show one of them. And we can see that we're running version 14215. And then I need to go through and figure out what my FNIC drivers are. We can see here I'm running version 1.5. Now once I have all that information, I can pump it into our HCL matrix. So I know it's a B200M3, and I can just quickly go through and walk down what what everything is with the information I actually went and collected. And so we get any sort of advisories. Okay, we can enter in all of our server information and then determine as far as what version of firmware is running. We can go through and look at the adapters. I'm going to jump over to my CNA, and I can see here that for my VIC 1240, I need to use version 1.6 of my fiber channel or FNIC adapter, and then for my ENICs, I need to use version 2.3. So if I take a look back at what I collected, I can see I'm not in compliance. But I have to do this for every single server in my environment, and that's a very tedious process. So I'm going to pass it over to Josh. He's going to show you how our tool works and give you a quick demo of the tool itself.
All right, so we'll go through the flow here in just a minute. Before that, though, I want to go ahead and get this job submitted. Since this is done asynchronously, it can take a few minutes for this to run. So let's go back over here to our tool, and we'll submit a job here. Submit that. All right. And so what we have, this is kind of our overall architecture. There are some on-premise components, obviously. Your hardware is going to be on-premise. Your UCS servers, your vCenter, and your vSphere hosts themselves. You'll also need a collector that sits on-prem, and that's what actually processes the commands that are sent to it and interacts with the on-prem infrastructure. The other components here are the message bus, which is kind of where everything runs through. All the commands are sent there. You have the portal, which is the front end. We were just there a minute ago. We'll explore that more in just a minute. And then there's the actual analyzer, which is what takes the data that's been collected, compares that against the HCL tool, and tells you if you're in compliance or not. So we'll kind of go through the flow here. The first step is you submit the job. We did that just a minute ago. The collector is sitting out there. It's pulling the message bus all the time, trying to see if there's any new jobs. So as soon as we submit that job, it's going to pick it up, and then it's going to start collecting the information. So the collector's fairly dumb. It's just taking instructions that it's given, which are going to be API calls for the most part, and then it's going to be running those against the different infrastructure components. So once it collects all of that data, it then submits that back to the message bus. Now, the message bus, as it's receiving updates, it's going to be sending those updates via a webhook to the analyzer. And then as the analyzer gets the update that it's completed, it's going to reach back out to the bus to get the full details of that job, and then it's going to get the HCL info from the HCL tool, and it's going to compile and submit the report details back to the bus. And then once the portal sees that there's a new report available, it's going to get and present that then to the user. So let's flip back over here real quick, and we're going to go ahead and refresh this page. Hopefully this is completed. So after we refresh the page, then it shows our report here, and we can just jump right into that to take a look. Let's pull that up. Alright, and what this shows us then is we see the blade, the serial number of the blade, the type of blade, the VMware version that's running on it, and then the firmware that's running on that blade as well. So this tells us the firmware version, and it also tells us that according to the HCL, that is supported. Now we get over here into the ENIC and FNIC details, we see what version is running, and it also tells us what version is supported. So in this particular scenario, we are in an unsupported state with this ENIC firmware. And again with the FNIC, it tells us what's running, what's supported, and we again are unsupported in this particular configuration. So again, it takes a lot of the tediousness out of really going through at a blade by blade level and collecting all of that information and puts it into one convenient place. So that's really all we had for the demo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.